Today on True Patriot Love, I am lucky enough to have Mike Wixon with me, and we are going to talk about housing, and specifically affordability of housing. You know, for years we've seen the decline in housing prices, and we've seen the market shift, and now with tariffs, people say, oh my goodness, housing is further gone because of the tariffs. And that's total hogwash, Mike. It really is. And, you know, it's interesting. We went through the budget and we took a look at affordable housing and we took a look at all the numbers for the budget. And it looked in the budget, when you looked at the budget, it looked like the government was going to spend a ton of money building houses. And the PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, he came out. This is the gentleman, Jason Jock. He came out and he said the budget wasn't sustainable. He said the budget's, not going to work. Right away, they posted his job.
It was within days. The guy's job was up for grabs.
Yeah, They put it out. We need someone who's different than this guy.
Right.
That was the requirement. Anyone who can replace him.
But then what he did next was pretty admirable, actually. Okay, you're getting rid of me?
Yep. He wrote a housing report. Yeah.
Okay, before I get out of here.
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to write a scathing housing report. Now, this is interesting. So, and I didn't catch this, to tell you the truth, because when you look at the budgets, you see a bunch of old programs, and then you see a bunch of new programs, and they tend to highlight all the new things coming in. So, at the back last pages on page 493, they have the current programs. So, but he's smart enough, because he's doing it every day. He went through and he takes a look at what programs are disappearing and what are not. And so it's interesting. So I'm just going to read this from his report. Federal planned spending on housing programs is set to decline 56% from $9.8 billion in 2025-26 to $4.3 billion in 28-29 due to the expiry of funding for the existing programs and cuts set out in the budget 2025.
So we're looking at, what he's saying is we're looking at the combined budget of old money and new money right now that looks really impressive. But in a couple of days, the old programs are going to expire and we're going to be left with only what's being applied in this new budget. Exactly.
And so then, in the budget, they actually were creating Build Canada Homes. So that's the Anna Bayou group, the former candidate for mayor of Toronto. They made a big hoopla about she was coming in and she's going to build a lot of homes. So they basically said, we're going to give her $7.3 billion to build a bunch of homes through 2030.
Okay.
So that's what they did.
Over a 5-year period, 4-year period, really.
Yeah.
They're going to execute these billions of dollars and turn them into affordable housing.
Exactly. So, and the interesting part is, out of that $7.3 billion, $625 million is to help community housing providers acquire rental apartments. $1 billion in contribution towards transitional and supportive housing, and $5.4 billion in grants, contributions, loans, concessions for the supply of affordable housing. So that makes up the $7.3 billion. And then she's also on top of that going to build 26,000 let's call it low rental facilities or apartments over 5 years, which only when you're all done, when it's all said and done, is only going to represent 2.1% increase in housing completions relative to the baseline.
Well, this is what I wondered. As you read that out to me, what I heard was, okay, this is not just money being handed out to build homes. These are subsidies, concessions, and discounting, basically, and probably development fees waived or whatever. But it is not cash in the hands. The developers, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're a developer, a builder of any sort, you still have to do the math. The math still has to work, whether you're getting it in the form of a loan or whatever the case is. The math has to work on affordable housing. I don't see any developers lining up for this option.
Well, she is going to build. So here's the interesting thing. She is going to build on her own. This is going to be, I don't know how this is going to go, because quite frankly, that's not easy. She is going to build 26,000. homes. Now she's going to try to, with the 7.3 billion, the additional monies, she is going to try to loan it out there, to your point, and whether or not anyone. So this is a very interesting thing. So
we're going to do government housing essentially.
Yes.
Which is never going to be built at the right spec and the right price. I'm sorry, but.
Well, and there's I think the studies that came out before the budget, we were short 670,000 homes.
So this is really a drop in the bucket that's not going to make a difference at all.
Which is what the PBO said. So the PBO came out, which was very interesting because I didn't really honestly, I was moving along after the budget, really not paying attention to it. And then this came out and I thought, this is a very interesting article. I wonder where he's going with it. So then I started looking at it and I dug into it. And then a few days later, Anna Bayul and, the Prime Minister chimed in and everyone got involved and they started doing interviews. And she was going across Canada and she was soliciting input from developers. So saying like, what can I do to make, this work for you? And was doing several interviews. And in her interviews, she started talking about using these monies to incentivize foreign entities to come in and invest in our housing programs or in this affordable housing program to make it work. And I'm thinking, okay, so we went from building some homes, and then we're now going to use that money to go abroad, get foreign money, bring it in, give them, and she's in her meetings across Canada, she's having several discussions about providing tax breaks to foreigners, so there's no withholding tax. So there's no issue of tax breaks to get them to bring their money into Canada and invest to build homes. And I'm like, okay, well, why aren't we giving those tax breaks to existing Canadians?
Developers already suffering right now.
Yeah. And so I'm like, that's kind of odd. So, and she talks about it quite a bit. And is
that because developers in Canada are flat out saying, look, your plan does not work in a profitable way for my corporation to go and build these homes for you? That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Well, so housing in Canada right now is a mess. So, coming into COVID, we saw the prices increase on everything. And, like everyone was, there's a supply demand issue here because of COVID. Therefore, we need to, charge this for a 2x4. Steel's gone up, roofing, everything went up. It never went back.
No, so it's funny that you say that. During COVID, even just prior to COVID, lumber went through the roof. Yeah. Right through COVID, it continued to climb. It has never gone. We're the largest lumber provider, I think, in North America.
Never went back.
And it never went back.
Yeah.
Even like you say, aluminum and steel, the same things that are put into these structures at the base level, just at the structural level, all of those went up in price and they haven't come down. And now we're hearing that tariffs are the reason for that. Well, They never started to come back the other way prior to the tariffs.
Right, the housing decline started 3 years ago. So the peak pricing and the drop down for housing started 3 years ago. It's been a gradual fall for 3 years. This is interesting. So we come out of this, and we have this discussion about, we're going to go provide foreign tax incentives. We're going to try to find ways to get people to come in. They realize, so after they make the statement, they realize that they have a crashing condo market. So I don't know how they didn't join the two together. And that most of these people that the Prime Minister, and he's doing these tours abroad, he's talking to people, he's trying to get them to come in and spend money in the country. Most of the people he's talking to are saying to him, well, I tried that already, right? Like I came and invested in Canada. I have, and you and I were just up in Ottawa, I bought 10,000 condos or 5,000 condos and I've been trying to sell them and I'm stuck with them in Canada right now. No one's in them. Rents are dropping. There's no return. Why would I come to your country and put money into rental properties where the rents are dropping because the value of your real estate is dropping? So
no, the ROI is not there. I mean, that's the biggest challenge I think that we have. And then the other thing is when you bring in that money, it's competitive money. It's not money meant to be supportive.
Yep.
It's competitive money. So if a developer comes in from another country, they're looking for profit. They're not looking to house Canadians.
No, they're not. It's not a gift. It's not charitable.
No.
They're better to go and buy a U.S. Treasury bond than they are to build housing here. So, so she's going around. So she's having all kinds of these discussions. And the funny thing is, this is where I don't really understand this. Well, I understand it now. Sorry, I shouldn't say I don't understand. I understand it now. How do you drop a budget, put the group in place, and not have a plan? You start down that road, and you're soliciting input, and this is kind of the criticism that we're hearing about a lot of programs right now, whether it be mining or whatever. Hey, you're the leader. You have to have a plan now on housing. Housing's not going to magically turn itself around, and people aren't going to magically start to build homes unless you come up with a plan and execute it.
It's funny, but when we were in Ottawa, I can't remember who said it, but I loved this phrase. This was the longest to arrive rush budget anybody's ever seen.
Yeah.
It took so long to get there, and then so much was really missed in the way of forecasting. It feels like everything was made to just satisfy 2025, 2026 on the books until we lose our attention from it, justifying old programs and doing really nothing for housing. When you say we're going to build 26,000 homes, Paul, I have to be honest with you, I don't see it. I don't see it happening in a timely fashion.
No.
I don't see it being done efficiently.
That's over 5 years.
Yeah, even I can't.
Well, you can do it. Our housing starts are roughly, they range, let's say 250,000 a month. Like when the times were good, we during COVID, we went up almost to 400,000. So we were building homes like crazy. We're decent.
That's in the commercial, in the private sector, right?
Yes.
So now I don't know if you've noticed how long it's taken to get a light rail subway built in Toronto.
Oh yeah.
But it's 5 years past.
Yes.
It's
over budget.
We don't even know how much it's over budget. We don't even know what the completion date will be. I'm sorry, but I can't see this being any different.
Yeah.
So I have to eliminate, from my mind as a Canadian, I have to eliminate that from the plan.
Okay.
Then what's left? A bunch of loans for developers who don't want to build.
Who aren't going to build it. So really what we're saying, and I agree with you, Mike, I'm not disagreeing with you. What you're saying is kind of where I ended up after looking at all this. Affordable housing is not on the radar.
No.
It's of no interest.
No, it's a talking point.
It's a talking point, but quite frankly, there's no follow-up, there's no backup, there's no support for it. And quite frankly, I kind of dug in. I thought, where did the word affordable housing pop up? And it looked like it popped up during the election. It looked like it's one of these election, these brand concepts that come out of elections where people start to grab onto, I'm going to build affordable housing so I can get the votes of the younger Canadian. I start to talk about affordable housing. I can get the votes of their parents because then they think their kids. And we did a good job at actually brainwashing everyone to say, okay, we need affordable housing.
Well, Build Canada Strong. The first word is build.
Yeah.
It gives you the impression something's being built.
Well, and affordable housing is something that in the UK, quite frankly, they've done forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is, social rented and intermediate housing provided to specify eligible households whose needs are not met by the market.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in Australia, it actually is affordable housing as housing that is reasonably adequate in standard and location for lower and middle income households and does not cost so much that the household is unlikely to be able to meet the basic needs on a sustainable basis.
So they do an evaluation of your income against where you work, how you're employed, what you can actually afford. And then they make an evaluation that says, Paul, we need you working in South Etobicoke. I know it's unaffordable to you. Here's something that will match in your price point.
Yes. And the interesting part is they set a percentage of gross income that has to go towards housing. So what they do is they do a mock budget and they say, I have to build housing at this level. So when the people get into it, they're only going to use 30 or 40% of their income for rent or housing costs.
So they work it backward from here's how this person can survive in this market at this time. Okay, how do we build housing? Let's go backward and build accommodation that works appropriately.
And that's how they do it in those countries.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds reasonable.
So we're touring across Canada asking a bunch of developers how we should do it when, quite frankly, other countries are doing it.
Yeah. Let's just go get the advice from them.
Well, we're not interested. Quite interested, and it is a little bit of it's a PR campaign. So we're going across, we're having these conversations about affordable housing. We're not going to build affordable housing, right?
If affordable housing, the lack of affordable housing was an outbreak, if it was COVID, what would our reaction be to that? We would get advice from other countries. We would get the experts who have already had successes. Yep. We would keep an eye. I don't see any evidence of that. I don't see somebody from Australia coming here and saying, okay, here's how we set this up. Here's how you budget. Here's how you work with developers. Here's how you actually put a hole in the ground that makes more sense.
But so here's what it was. So this is, in my opinion. So this is one man's opinion on how this all plays out, given that I've done a bunch of stuff in the market through COVID and after COVID on the housing side. We created this affordable housing. And it was a great branding concept. We sold it to everyone. Theoretically, it makes sense, right? We want to get housing for younger people. We want parents not to have kids in their basement too long. Yeah. They want to retire. Our baby boomers are of the age, they're retired. And quite frankly, they're looking at inheritances and to the millennials and such. So, it's a good buzzword to use. Then all of a sudden, we're coming out of COVID. Then we started layering on, we need affordable housing, therefore we need all of these bylaw changes.
Yeah, that's something that you've seen certainly in Toronto.
Well, we've seen it on the federal level because most of the Toronto programs are supported by the federal housing minister.
Yeah,
not the provincial housing minister. The provinces tend to go mute on all this. They don't want to lose votes.
Right.
So what they do is they kind of play the icky and they say, well, the feds are telling us, we need to build sixplexes.
Well, it's true. They did do that. They promised a huge amount of money. The city of Toronto, I think, took almost $500 million.
Yeah.
Half of it was paid. And then the city decided, well, we can't really do that.
Yeah. They never met their targets.
And they never gave the money back, by the way.
Right. Well, that's sitting out there, right? They're still, I think they're going to still do an end run and try to get some of those bylaws passed citywide again, because they only got so many jurisdictions. But as far as multiplexes, duplexes, the fact that you can do retail beside you in your most subdivisions in Toronto right now, someone can build a retail shop right beside you if they want to convert their home. You have small apartments.
How does that help housing? That's wild in itself.
Well,
replacing a home with a business is totally contradicts the process.
Yeah. Why would you enter into a neighborhood if you're going to have, it's like the old days, remember downtown when they used to build on every corner convenience store?
And used to the guy lived up, the
guy lived above and used to walk over and used to get milk from Sam who ran the convenience store that's what we did when we came to Toronto.
True.
Yeah. So
Max Milk.
So now I go change all the bylaws. So now all the bylaws, basically are supporting growth for affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not really going to stimulate affordable housing. But now what I've managed to do, what have I managed to do? I've managed to change a bunch of bylaws. I've managed to create this thing called affordable housing. And now I'm like, okay, great. But why did I do it?
Not only that, but those bylaw changes. Mm-hmm. Sorry, but if I'm the guy not looking to renovate my property into a sixplex or a fourplex or a retail place, the guy beside me wants to do that. These bylaw changes enabled him to do something in my neighborhood I didn't bargain for. Yeah. And in fact, they probably have devalued my property.
Yeah. So here we go. So now this is interesting. So this is where I want to kind of walk you through Paul's opinion on this, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay, Canada, let's just talk for a minute, just high level, right? So, we basically have a population around 40, Jim and I argue about this. He says it's 46 million people. Statistically, it's around, let's say 41 million. The people who are recorded, you and I always talk about it. There's probably 10% more at least that are illegal here because we don't have a good record of who's here. So they mostly live in the urban centers. So 80% of the people live in larger urban centers. Most of them live in the major cities, right? So Toronto, Montreal, so, Ottawa, those places, right? Median age now is higher. It's getting 40 plus because we have an aging population. I think 18 to 20% of our population, about 7.5 million, are baby boomers who are, 70. So, we have an aging population. And I think, for the first time in 23, it was greater than our under 18 population.
Isn't that something, right?
Yeah, so it is.
We saw it coming.
Our fertility rates are really low.
Yeah.
Our immigration, as we talk about on many shows, it was super high.
Yeah.
So going through COVID, we immigrated a ton of people. So now we've immigrated a number of people. You got to kind of put this all in context. We created affordable housing. We immigrated a bunch of people. We put a strain on the system. We said, okay, because we immigrated a bunch of people, because our kids can't get homes, we need affordable housing. We changed all the bylaws. So we then started changing all the bylaws for density and densification and small apartment buildings on major streets and large apartment buildings by transit centers. We went into a flurry of activity, which councils do because they don't know why they're doing it.
No, they just got to react.
Yeah, they're not super bright, quite frankly. They tell them that they need affordable housing. It sounds like they're going to get votes. They start to pass bills and legislation that talks for affordable housing, right? So now we have a bunch of affordable housing. So here we go. And, we have an aging population. Now, interesting about our aging population, our baby boomers are kind of at the end. So any baby boomer that's holding on to their home in Toronto right now.
No, they cashed out likely on their super property, the super value on their property. Well, it was so extreme that it actually became the means of retirement for many people who bought a house.
Sure, during COVID, they were dropping out. If you're one of the unlucky ones and you couldn't get your parent to sell their house during COVID, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah,
that was a boneheaded decision by your parent. And quite frankly, anyone who wants to stay in their house and watch the devaluation of their house over the next few years,
well, it deteriorates itself.
Yeah, well, it falls apart. It just was a silly decision. Yeah. So. But they did, and they didn't exit at the right time. So now you have a bunch of people, quite frankly, who are probably pretty savvy, baby boomers, who exited. You walk around Toronto, you're not seeing a lot of baby boomers anymore.
No, in fact, it's funny that you say that. Even in the neighborhood where we have our studios, which is historically the baby boomers ran this neighborhood, they're gone.
They're gone. Yeah, you don't see them anymore. So you do see millennials, right? You see a lot.
You know where I saw baby boomers?
Where?
From Canada? Mexico.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, sure they did.
They found a better place to live.
Yeah.
The suits are there, and they've got a condo somewhere north of Toronto in the outskirts, and they can still afford to live their winters out. And that was the dream.
Right.
But what remains is properties that people are mortgaged to the hilt on, that the next generation has so much debt just to get into a home or to survive in this market, that anything left of them is going to be gone anyway.
Well, the interesting part, so now, I'm with you. The baby boomers, so they sell. Yeah. Well, for the most part, the savvy ones sell.
Yeah.
So they're moving to other markets. So now you see, and it's funny how we talk about it now, and we don't correlate them because no one wants to really admit what's happening. It's a very interesting scenario. So now you hear St. John's, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Charlottetown, right?
I was shocked to hear this one. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all growing at 8 to 10% growth in real estate values. So they're hitting a boom.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, wow, these small towns. Of course they're hitting a boom. People cashed out. They went to smaller towns, safer towns, right? They got out of the major urban cities with all their money. Now, so let's talk a little about demographics a little, because I gotta, we forget sometimes where the wealth in Canada sits.
That's true.
Right. So, not to depress everyone who's still here in Toronto, but the wealth in Canada, quite frankly, 20% of the population in Canada make up 67% of the net worth of people's holdings for Canada. So the wealth sits in a very small group, which, I looked at it the other day because there's not a lot of stats. They go back as far as 2023, and then they update them in these periodicals once in a while. But, that only makes up, and it's a small group of people. So if you look at families, so I'm trying to find the families. Here you go. If you look at the families, that makes up about 3,372 families, right? Make up about $11 trillion. So that's families.
What?
Or sorry, 3,372,000
Make up
families.
Families make up that
Make up 67% of the
wealth.
net worth of Canada.
Okay.
Right. So the
Wow, that's a
wealth.
very small percentage of the population.
So if you look at it, say 4 people per family, you're talking about 12 million people out of 40. So that's where your worth sits. So, the rest of it, and then you go down and you go to 40%, is just the middle income people. They make up, there's 6,739,000 families.
Okay.
So that's the next. And then you have the lower value, the lower tier 40%, which basically there's the same. There's 6,740,000 families.
So the majority of the wealth in this country is held by 20% of the population.
Yeah, it's like a funnel this way, right?
Yeah.
So it's like an inverse funnel. So, or like a regular funnel. So, and that's how wealth is distributed in Canada. So the majority of them have left. When I mean left, they've sold off in the major cities.
Yeah.
Because remember, the baby boomers make up 20% of the population. The majority of wealth sits with the baby boomers. And that's the mistake we make. So as we talk about, condo market crashes, which we're going to talk about in a minute, people think, it's going to rebound back. Who's
going to buy it?
Who's coming in to buy them?
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing, because, when you look at these charts,
it's not foreign investment because it can't turn a return.
No.
The baby boomers wanted out. They want their cash to live on.
Yeah, they've already exited.
I don't know who buys the condos.
Well, I guess you can get some
BlackRock.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess so. What you get is some investment companies come in as they devalue.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not trying to depress everyone, but you right now have 30,000 condos sitting empty in Canada, 10,000 of them being in Ontario. I know, they write stories, which I showed you before, about how, that's not going to cause a crash in the system.
Well, the banks are saying that it's not going to cause a crash in the system because the banks benefit from the purchase of these financing banks. Like you pointed out to me, I think that the last time this happened, what did the banks in Canada do that were profitable? They went and bought other banks.
Yeah, well, so the mortgage meltdown, we were one of the few countries during the mortgage meltdown that did very well. So we had very stable banks, and we came through very, very well. And we went out and actually we spread our wings, and we went into the U.S. We bought other banks. We diversified ourselves, which at the time it seemed like a good idea. Banks were devalued in the U.S., so we went in and bought Harris Bank, right?
Yeah.
TD got Harris. There's some big banks that they picked up in the U.S., which I think was a decent idea at the time. It increased their exposure, but not all. I always remind people, a lot of the condo sales, like a lot of people who are in the condo townhouse, which there's roughly 30,000, let's give or take 30,000 empty condos on sale right now in Canada. There's roughly the same amount of townhouses.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that are sitting empty. No one's picking them up. So,
and they fall kind of in the same category, right? Most townhouses are condo, or if they're freehold townhouses,
yes,
they are part of a communal fund.
Yes.
Yeah.
But a lot of those people, so the interesting part of that, a lot of those people that actually got those condos and those townhouses got them through a mortgage broker and went to private equity. Right. So we don't talk about that a lot. So forget the major banks, because I think the major banks, probably did a good job. They probably evaluated the loans really well. A lot of the private equity guys who've got a couple more interest points, they're struggling.
Those were the banks that came to the floor when people didn't have enough money in their existing credit to go out there and participate in the flurry of buying during COVID.
Yes.
So they're kind of, I guess if you hang a small bank out or a private equity bank, it's a big deal when somebody hands in the keys. Every time somebody can't or they default, that takes it's not a major bank. Well, it has a heavier effect, I would imagine.
And not to knock, this is how do I say it in a nice way? After COVID and when we were all getting back into the swing of things, I would go to events. and events with my wife and other events. And, you know, there'd be 200-300 people celebrating that we were all back after COVID. And I remember going to 3 events in a row that were 300 plus people. And I said to my wife on the way home, I said, God, you know what I'm noticing? I'm noticing a lot of people that we're meeting aren't working, but they own 5 or 6 properties.
Yeah.
And they're relatively new in the country. So, you know, we were going to these events and, you know, if there were 300 people, 100 people, I was talking to mostly everyone because they were family related events, you know, so we knew them all. And we were having these conversations and, you know, as I was saying, well, what are you doing now? Oh, I just bought 2 condos and I have the house over here. And I'm like, oh, that's great. What are you working at? Oh, I have part-time work at the restaurant. I'm thinking, how do you have, you know, and
Paul, my theory on that one, by the way, sorry if I may, there was so much bad mortgage writing.
Oh, crazy.
I mean,
insane.
I couldn't believe I rented a house for a short time. I can't believe what they paid for the house. I mean, it was easily overvalued by $1 million.
Yep.
The mortgage on it was basically being covered by my rent, but then they had to put in everything there afterward. And in the end, what they had to do to make it feasible was they had to subdivide the property when we moved out into 7 apartments.
Yeah. Well, that's what a lot of people did, right? Whether they were legal or illegal.
No, it wasn't legal, of course, but that's how they're managing because the mortgage they got written didn't match their income, didn't come close to matching their income.
Well, and then after that, once they get going and they can show income, then they can get another one, and then they get another one, and they can get another one. And the next thing you know, and that's what we were finding as we were going through it, right? All these properties were kind of pancaked on each other.
Yeah.
A lot like the mortgage meltdown in 2008, 2007.
No, one leans back on the other and the dominoes fall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as the market shows, the renters go away, the students disappear.
Yeah, that's another thing in this market, right? We're talking about affordable housing. A lot of that was affordable rental housing for students. Now we've eliminated an enormous, and the colleges are feeling this in a big way. We've eliminated an enormous amount of the students that will qualify to stay here after they're done their education or can even afford to be here during that education. That's another group that has left the rental marketplace. Rental prices are going to continue to drop. I'm not an expert, but every evidence is that that's going to be the case. Makes it harder to make them profitable.
So interesting. Affordable housing, we get everyone going. We change all the bylaws. Then we say, oh, stop. We're going to turn off the tap for immigration.
Seems like the wrong moment to be doing that, if I may be honest with you.
Yeah, so now we turn off the tap for immigration. All of a sudden, all those people who have come in and they've done all those loans and they've got all those condos and they've got everything put together, they're done.
Yeah, there'll be stranded homes in many places.
So, you know, like I was mentioning, 30,000 condos, 30,000 towns. So now they're sitting there and they're like, well, who's going to take them? And to top it off, this is the interesting thing. Coming out of COVID, which I haven't brought up, I was just looking at my notes quickly. Do you remember the foreign buyer exemption?
Oh, yeah.
Or foreign buyer restriction?
Restrictions, yeah.
Yeah. So the foreign buyer restriction was effective January 1st, 2023.
Right.
And it just got extended. I thought it was going to get dropped.
Well, you would hope that if we're trying to sell off some of these condos to incite the market, but then again, that's a political move that is going to sound unpopular. Oh, we've opened up to foreign investment again. I thought we were trying to build Canada strong. Nobody's buying the condos. We need to do something. And by the way, if nobody's buying those condos or they abandon those condos, the effect on the other condo holders that are owners that are still there that hold their property is that the reserve funds for the condo corporation to fix the roof or fix the plumbing or keep the place nice or even get another that's going to suffer. So the devaluing of these buildings overall is the next thing that happens. We need them pulled. Forget
condo associations and maintenance fees and everything else, because quite frankly, you're not going to be able to maintain the buildings.
No,
that's a That's a
So the
given.
people that own them already are those buildings are becoming devalued. They'll become less cared for. They'll disintegrate.
Which is, listen, we're just playing. This is the Florida playbook in 2007, 2008, right? Everyone went out. Money was free. Interest was low.
Yeah.
Banks were doing,
Squirrely deals.
Squirrely deals. If you want, they were creating subprime mortgages. Subprime mortgages weren't based on anything. Here we are, 30,000 condos, 30,000 townhouses. If anyone says to me we didn't do that, I really call bullshit.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's been lined up. We put ourselves in that position.
Now, so the foreign buyers comes on, all of a sudden, foreign buyers. So now that doesn't take the condo industry by storm. A little bit it does, but custom homes are done. So now when the foreign buyers drop out, anything over, if you notice, if you look at the graphs, anything over $3 million just explodes, right?
Wow.
So,
there's nothing profitable over $3 million. There's no point in building a custom property.
Zero. And unless we open it up ever again, there'll be no custom home business building high-end custom homes. And probably we don't need it. So when we get to the end of today's show, I think people are going to look at it and say, well, maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. I do believe that, quite frankly, people will buy nicer homes. They'll buy existing nicer homes,
renovate them, update them.
Yeah, or there are beautiful homes out there now that are going to be hugely devalued.
Right.
So, quite frankly, there's gorgeous homes. There's guys who spend $5-6 million. That $5-6 million home at the end of all this is going to be, it was 200% overvalued, so it's going to probably go at $3-4 million.
Right.
So those still will sit, and people will move into those. But they'll move into them, but they won't build them.
It'll be a more appropriate buyer at the more appropriate price.
Right. Yeah.
And what we've experienced is a bubble.
It is a bubble, but then the challenge with that, home building never comes back. So I think that's the reality. And because I think if you actually look at it and you say to yourself, well, that's very negative. But if we're not going to build affordable houses, and we don't need affordable houses, because quite frankly, the equity value of people right now in their homes is diminishing to the extent that those houses we're living in will be the affordable houses.
Nobody ever talks about affordable housing in downtown Manhattan, Paul. Nobody talks about affordable housing in downtown Chicago.
Right.
We don't talk about affordable housing in downtown Washington, D.C.
Right.
There is something to be said for, if you're going to live in a metropolis, you need to be rich. That's it. If you're going to live in Manhattan, you need to have the means to do it.
Right.
There's no means to create an affordable approach in those markets. And I think maybe this is a separate topic for another day, but
it is.
I think that we've made it seem like anybody can live in Toronto. Anybody should be able to live in Vancouver. No, I'm sorry. Those are like the Manhattans of Canada. You cannot afford to live there.
Well, it's funny, and this is how people grabbed onto this narrative. And this narrative is very powerful. My son should be able to live in Richmond Hill. My daughter should be able to live in Etobicoke. No.
Oh, you baby boomers, you drove the price up. What do you expect to happen?
Yeah, no, they shouldn't. Quite frankly, they should be like us. They should, they should have to struggle. Quite frankly, I have this discussion. I watched a show you did the other day, and the gentleman was driving me a little crazy because I wanted to scream and say, like, did you get married in your 20s like we had to? Because we had to get married in our 20s, so we had double incomes. So quite frankly, we could bank some money together with someone else. So not only was it, a love thing, but it also was a financial. You were smart enough to know that we had to hook up in our 20s and get married so we can put some money aside so we can get a first down payment on a home. It wasn't going to be a great home. It was going to be a fixer-upper.
Right.
But quite frankly, that's where we were going to go.
And we were going to start a family there. We're going to build our careers and see what happened from there. Yeah, there shouldn't be the expectation. You're right about this.
Yeah.
You know what? This is a really good point. Nobody should have the expectation of anything. That entitlement of home needs to disappear.
Well, it's kind of like when you meet developers now, I should make money. So she's, Anna Bayo's going across Canada talking to developers, trying to get their opinion on how they make money. Why? Why? They don't, there's no, they should make money based on their savvy building skills in the marketplace. They should be yelling that the cost of materials is going down.
Yeah.
The government should be actually trying to meet with the lumber industry, with the steel industry, and to get housing costs back reasonable so they can build things again.
I would hope that they are, because that's a huge stumbling. I don't know.
No.
That's a huge stumbling block.
Yeah.
Like, okay, the developers can't make money, so they're not going to do it. Who can blame them? How can we make it possible for them to make money, even profitable enough just to support the country? And I don't think tax breaks, loans, and deferrals are the way to do it. Maybe the developers are loving that. I don't see them taking it up.
No.
And I don't see, we just talked to a builder this morning, and what did he say? Things are really bad now, and everybody knows in the new year, they're getting worse for people in the construction.
They're putting their hammers down.
Yeah.
That's what he told us. He said, listen, except for a few companies, there's no one home building right now.
Right.
So there's a few of them are going to try to home build, but pretty much that's
hundreds of people have been laid off in the construction industry.
Yeah,
hundreds in this one company.
Yeah,
thousands and thousands of people are being laid off. We don't have a building force that is activated anywhere in Canada.
Well, but shame on us. So affordable housing comes. What do? We change our bylaws. So as prices are going up, we decide to change our bylaws. We densify. So we go to council, we densify. We decide to do all these crazy projects that shut our roads, create issues with traffic. We have traffic issues. We basically create rooming houses. We do social programs in neighborhoods, injection sites, all things that cause the value of that neighborhood to decrease.
Yeah.
So all the policies were changing. So we kind of went, okay, we went back too far left, which then caused the housing industry to start to crumble and the values to go down, but still not selling. So here's because immigration is cut off.
Right.
So now we have no one coming in to buy. We've cut off that immigration tap.
Foreign investments.
We've jacked up all the bylaws, and densification bylaws have increased.
Yeah.
We have massive amount of traffic issues. We have a awful transit system.
Our transit system, I was going to add this, our transit system does not work
for the core.
The core of Toronto.
For the core of Toronto, it's just in shambles right now. We went to zero parking. So we started telling people, in order to get to more density, we could have no parking. Yeah. So basically that's an issue because no one's on the transit. So no one's on the transit. So all of a sudden, all these things culminate into decreasing values, but there's no demand. So as the value goes down, so here we are, we're, coming out of this, now, and people are saying, well, this is a blip. If you look at the map for the last, since 1960, we've went through 5 recessions, 5 or 6.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
1960, 61, 74, 75, 81, 82, 90, 91.
I remember that one.
And 2008, 2000.
I remember that one.
Right. So 5. Well, we're going to hit a bump now and we're going to come back.
How?
We don't, these recessions occurred when the baby boomers were in the market with all the wealth, because all the wealth of the baby boomers. Now, when you look at the breakdown of wealth, right, where do you think, when you look at the chart that shows stocks, bonds, pleasure homes, residential, where do you think all the value sits? Majority of value sits in residential.
Must be residential homes,
because as they rode the value of their homes up, it went into trillions of dollars, and that is the mainstay. Now,
I wish I had the equity in my home in stock.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like I really do. Every day I think about this now.
So now with that going, so now that's eroded, a huge net worth component. So which is interesting if you look at net worth for the 20% I mentioned for the top tier of the wealth in Canada was always pretty stable. Well, you know what? Coming out of COVID, it started to dip. So when you look at the chart now, it's going down. It's a couple percent a year, right? people are exiting out, right? They know.
See how they're cashing out as quickly as they can.
So at the end of it, and this is the conclusion that I've drawn, Paul's opinion, of course, right? The affordable housing they're talking about, it's people's home.
It's true. It's the homes that were.
It's the homes that exist today.
The exit strategy homes for the baby boomers are tomorrow's affordable housing, which means somewhere in the middle, somebody lost their shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole generation and group of people that got into the market at the wrong time that will never see any appreciation in their lifetime of their major asset, which is their home. So now you tie that together with the fact that a lot of people thought they had significant value in their home and overspent. So, and during COVID, I thought I was on cloud nine. I was sitting there going, look at all my properties, they're worth X, wow, I'm on, so I can spend a little money. I can buy a nicer car, or I can fix up something, I spend money on because, I think my value's gone up.
Right.
It's not. So now all that money I spent on all those things was probably a bad decision.
Because your overall wealth scenario actually fell.
It was never there.
And it was
on paper.
Okay, so let me connect the dots on this one, if I may.
Yeah.
So we changed the bylaws, we changed immigration, we changed the deal on what can be built where and how we'll finance it.
Yep.
So now if you bought one of the baby boomer homes, which I did, by the way.
Yep.
You're stuck. We
all did. Yeah.
We're stuck in a home that not only affordable housing hasn't been touched here, as best I can tell. No markers moved forward.
No.
What's happened is we've just quietly devalued everybody's home.
Yeah. We look over there. We all looked over there at affordable housing and our own equity dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah. So affordable housing became us.
So affordable housing
became our own homes.
Thanks, but I already paid too much for that then.
They just all the wealth that was accumulated in your parents' day that was passed on to you has just disappeared.
I got to hand it to Jason Jacques, okay?
Yeah, and that was all based on, you know what? I got to give him too. You know what? Shout out to Jason Jacques at the end of this, because quite frankly, I think, he can only say so much, and I get it. I don't think I would have fully got the full scope of that story until I started reading what he was talking about.
Well, he put the budget review out there and then the affordable housing review side by side. We kind of do owe this a debt of gratitude to him because really what we've learned is, okay, the market adjusted and we all lost our shirts, but nobody's talking about that yet. We got to get past 2026, this ridiculous budget and all this ridiculous spending before we explain to Canadians, not only did we do this to you, but we've also devalued your home.
Yeah. Next show, I want to, I don't want to be the Grinch on this one. Next show, we're going to go into why and exactly how it got devalued. So, stay tuned.
You know what, Paul? You're getting coal in your stocking. You bummed me out. No, thank you for sharing this because the truth is, in our group, you're the guy who actually breaks down the numbers. And if you follow the money every time, the real story's there. And the real story here is affordable housing is a pipe dream. And the result of trying to do it is just devaluing what we already own as Canadians.
Yeah, it's cultivating a story to get us to be okay with the fact that our value went down.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.